My name is Maisie Barnett. I'm 22 years old. 3 weeks ago, at my college graduation, the father who abandoned me when I was 14 walked onto the stage arm in arm with a 19-year-old girl I'd never seen. In front of my entire class, my professors, and every family there, he smiled proudly and announced loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is my real daughter, the one I'm actually proud of." She wore a glittering pink shirt that screamed, "Proud big sister." My mother stood up and ran sobbing from the stands before they could even call my name. That night, she texted me one desperate line: "If he gives you the envelope, do not open it in front of her. She can't see the date." I thought the tuition, the car, and every dollar he gave me these past 4 years meant he was finally making amends. I was a fool. Every single cent was a trap. And that girl wasn't a surprise sister. She was the final piece of evidence in the plan he had spent years building to destroy me completely. Before I get into what that envelope actually held, if you connect with family stories that make your blood boil, take a moment to hit like and subscribe. But only if this one hits you right in the gut. And drop your location and what time it is, where you're listening from, in the comments. I'd love to know I'm not alone in this. Let me back up. Because to understand what that envelope held, you need to understand how carefully my father rebuilt himself inside my life, and why every piece of it was calculated. My father's name is Scott Barnett. He left when I was 14. No conversation. No warning. One Tuesday, he was sitting at our kitchen table eating Tammy's pot roast. My mother's name is Tammy. And by Thursday, his closet was empty, his truck was gone, and there was a woman in Rochester posting photos of them at a winery together. He didn't call on my birthday. He didn't call on Christmas. He didn't call when I broke my wrist during volleyball junior year, and my mom drove me to the ER at 2 in the morning alone, steering with one hand because her other hand was holding mine. 4 years of nothing. Then my grandfather died. Gerald Barnett, my father's father, passed away the summer before my freshman year of college. He owned a small chain of auto repair shops upstate. 3 locations. Nothing flashy, but Gerald had built them from scratch. And by the time he retired, they were worth real money. He was the only person in my father's family who ever treated me like I mattered. He used to sit me on the counter of the Utica shop when I was little and let me count the bolts in the parts drawer. "Maze," he'd say, "you've got the head for numbers. Don't let anyone tell you that's not a gift." I became an accounting major because of him. 3 months after Grandpa Gerald's funeral, my father called. Not my mother. Me. Directly. His voice was different. Softer. Slower. Like he was reading from something he'd practiced. He said he'd been doing a lot of thinking since his dad passed. Said he wanted to make amends. Make things right. I didn't trust him. But I was 18, about to start college with no savings, and my mom's salary as a school administrative assistant wasn't covering much beyond the mortgage. So when he offered to pay my tuition, all 4 years at SUNY Albany, I said yes. And he didn't stop at tuition. He bought me a car. A used Honda Civic, clean, reliable. He co-signed my apartment lease junior year when I moved off campus. He paid the first 3 months of rent. He sent grocery money. Not every month, but enough to feel steady. Enough to feel like a pattern. Like something you could count on. I started to believe it. I told friends, "My dad and I are in a good place now." I started to think maybe losing his own father had cracked something open inside him. Maybe grief had let the real person out. I was wrong about which person it let out. I graduated with a 3.8 GPA, Bachelor of Science in Accounting from SUNY Albany. I walked across that stage on a Saturday morning in May, with the sun coming through the high windows and my mother crying happy tears in the third row. That's when I saw him. He came from the east side of the parking lot. I noticed him because he was walking fast, almost pulling someone by the arm. A girl, thin, young, dark hair pulled back tight. She looked nervous. The way people look when they've been told a scene will go one way and they're not sure it will. She was wearing a custom-printed t-shirt, bright pink glitter letters, "Proud Big Sister." My father walked straight into the crowd of graduates still milling around after the ceremony. He stopped in the center of my group, my friends, their parents, my advisor, and said, loud, theatrical, like a man delivering a speech he'd rehearsed in the car, "Maisie, I want you to meet someone. This is Haley. She's your sister." I didn't speak. My friend Kayla grabbed my arm. "My mother." I saw her face from 20 feet away. White. Completely white, like someone had pulled a plug and all the color drained out at once. She stood up from her folding chair, turned, and walked out through the side exit. I heard her shoes on the concrete. Quick, uneven steps. She didn't start crying until she was in her car. I know because I could see the car from where I stood, and I watched the brake lights come on and stay on for a long time before she pulled away. The girl, Haley, stared at the ground. She didn't look triumphant. She looked scared, like she'd been promised something that wasn't happening. My father reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. Thick, legal-sized. "Your grandfather wanted you to have this," he said. "I've been holding on to it for the right time." The right time. My graduation. The one day that was supposed to be mine. I took the envelope. I didn't open it. Something in me, maybe the same instinct that makes me double-check every decimal on a balance sheet, knew that you don't open a document without context. You read the footnotes first. You check who prepared it, and when, and why it's in front of you now instead of a year ago. My phone buzzed. "Mom, if he gives you the envelope, don't open it in front of her. She can't see the date." Not, "Don't open it. Don't open it in front of her." And not, "She can't know what's inside. She can't see the date." My mother knew what was in the envelope. She'd known long enough to have a warning ready. I put the envelope in my bag. I told my father I needed to go. He looked surprised, almost annoyed. The scene wasn't playing out the way he'd scripted it. Haley called after me. "It was nice to meet you." Her voice cracked on the word nice. I walked to my car, got in, and sat there for 15 minutes before I turned the engine on. Not because I was crying, because I was thinking about dates, about why a date would matter, about why a 19-year-old girl wasn't allowed to see one. My phone lit up 4 more times. 2 texts from Kayla, one from my roommate, one from a number I didn't recognize, probably a relative who'd been in the audience. Word travels fast when a man turns his daughter's graduation into a performance. I didn't answer any of them. I drove home in silence. No radio. Just the hum of the engine in the car my father bought, parked outside the apartment with his name on the lease. I set the envelope on my kitchen table. It sat there while I changed out of my graduation dress. It sat there while I made coffee I didn't drink. I kept looking at it the way you look at a package you didn't order, knowing that whatever's inside, you didn't ask for it, and the person who sent it had their own reasons. The next morning, before I touched the envelope, I did what I'd been trained to do. I looked at the numbers. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table and pulled bank statements from the last 4 years. All of them. I printed them out. I got a yellow highlighter, old habit from my internship at the firm downtown, and I started reading line by line. Every tuition payment, every semester. Paid directly to SUNY Albany's bursar office from an account under the name Scott A. Barnett. Not transferred to my account first. Not a check written to me that I then forwarded. His account, his name. Directly to the school. I logged into the bursar portal. Payment history. Every line item. Paid by Scott A. Barnett. I never signed anything. I never authorized anything. I never even saw the invoices. He told me, "I'll handle the paperwork, Maze. You focus on school." And I let him. because it sounded like love. I pulled the car title from the glove box. I'd never looked at it closely. I was 18 when he bought the car, and I was just grateful to have wheels. Title holder, Scott A. Barnett. Not Maisie Barnett. Not co-owned. His name, his car. In my driveway, with my gym bag in the trunk and my air freshener on the mirror and 40,000 miles of my life on the odometer. I'd washed this car, changed the oil, replaced a tire on I-87 in February, kneeling on frozen asphalt with numb fingers. But on paper, in every way that matters to a court, it belonged to a man who didn't know my shoe size. I pulled the lease for my apartment. His name, line 3. Co-signer, Scott A. Barnett. He'd suggested it junior year. I'll co-sign so the application goes through faster. But I'd checked my credit score last year for a class project. 740. The landlord would have approved me in 15 minutes. So why was his name there? I sat back. The highlighter was still uncapped in my hand. My kitchen table looked like a crime scene reconstruction. Paper everywhere, yellow streaks marking every place his name appeared instead of mine. 4 years of tuition. His name. Car. His name. Apartment. His name. Grocery money. Always from his account to mine, always digital, always traceable. He never handed me cash. He never wrote a check to Maisie Barnett. Everything left a trail. Everything had his signature on it. I'm an accountant. I've spent 4 years learning to tell the difference between honest books and cooked ones. And what I was looking at on my kitchen table wasn't a generous father's financial record. It was a paper trail built with the precision of someone who wanted to prove, in court, that a 22-year-old woman couldn't function without him. I picked up my phone, searched Instagram, Haley Dawson. Her profile was public. Normal posts, selfies, Target uniform, restaurant food. I scrolled back 2 years and stopped. A photo of Haley and my father at a steakhouse, white tablecloth, wine. She was smiling, leaning into him. Caption: Dinner with Dad. He says big things are coming. 2 years ago, the year he started paying my junior year tuition. The year he put his name on my lease. Big things are coming. He said that to her while he was tightening the leash around me. I screenshot the photo. Accountants keep receipts. If your own mother told you not to open an envelope because it would hurt her, would you still open it? I drove to my mother's house the next morning. She was standing at the kitchen sink, water running, scrubbing dishes she'd already washed. She does that when she's nervous. Hands moving, back turned. The sound of water filling the silence she doesn't want to fill herself. You knew about the envelope before he gave it to me, I said. Not a question. She didn't turn around. The faucet kept running. What's in it, Mom? She turned off the water, reached for the towel, dried her hands slowly, smoothing the fabric, folding it, refolding it over the oven handle, buying time with a dish towel. Then she faced me. It's not what you think, she said. Her eyes were dry. She'd finished her crying sometime in the last 36 hours. Then tell me what it is. Your grandfather left some things. Your father... Pause. She chose her next words the way someone crosses a frozen pond, testing each step before committing weight. Handled it. Handled what? The estate. After Gerald passed. There were arrangements. Arrangements. Not a will. Not an inheritance. Arrangements. She was using words with no edges, words you couldn't grab. You knew Grandpa left something for me, I said. Her jaw tightened. The refrigerator hummed. The same low, constant sound I'd grown up with. The background frequency of every conversation in this house where nobody said what they meant. Maisie, if you dig into this, you're going to hurt all of us. She looked up. Including me. Including me. Not your father, not the family. Including me. My mother, The woman who ran crying from my graduation was telling me she had something personal to lose, something that only survived as long as nobody looked too closely at the numbers. "When did you find out about the will?" I asked. "Maisie." "When?" She folded her arms. Protective. "It doesn't matter when, but it did. If she'd known before the tuition started, before the car, before the lease, then she'd watched every piece of the trap get built and said nothing. Not because she couldn't speak, because speaking would cost her." I picked up the envelope. I'd brought it with me. "I'm opening this tonight," I said. "With or without your explanation." I walked toward the door. She called after me. "Maisie, please." Her voice broke. She can't know the date. The same words from the text. But hearing them in her kitchen, with the faucet dripping behind her and the towel still damp in her hands, they sounded different. They sounded like a woman standing in the exact center of a lie, afraid to step in any direction because every path led somewhere worse. I drove home. The envelope rode on the passenger seat. I didn't touch it until I was inside my apartment, door locked, blinds closed, desk lamp on, phone face down. I opened the envelope with a letter opener. Precision. No tearing. Inside, 6 pages of legal paper, blue notary stamp in the corner, seal of a law firm in Syracuse. At the top of page 1, last will and testament of Gerald Raymond Barnett, my grandfather's will. I turn the pages slowly. Legal language. The kind that sounds like it's describing something simple in the most complicated way possible. Beneficiaries, provisions, executor designations. My father's name appeared twice in the first 3 pages, always in the context of what he was not entitled to do without court approval. My grandfather didn't trust his own son with a credit card, let alone an estate. My name appeared on the second page, in a clause about asset distribution. Maisie Louise Barnett. My full legal name, printed in 12-point Times New Roman inside a document my grandfather had signed 2 decades ago. He'd put me in his will when I was 2 years old, when I was still counting bolts on the counter of his auto shop and calling him Pop Pop. My hand shook once. I set the pages down on the bedspread, picked them back up. The will was dated 20 years ago. 20 years. Haley is 19. The distribution clause read, "Assets shall be divided among all legal grandchildren recognized at the time of signing." At the time of signing, there was exactly 1 grandchild. Me. Haley hadn't been born yet. She can't see the date. If Haley saw the date, she'd know the will was signed before she existed. She'd know the inheritance had nothing to do with her. And if she knew that, she might stop cooperating with whatever plan my father had built around her compliance. But that wasn't the part that made me stop breathing. I turned to page 4. There was a separate clause, a designated portion, set aside specifically for me, by name. And it had a condition. The designated portion for Maisie Louise Barnett shall be released on the condition that, at the time of claim, the beneficiary is not living under the direct or indirect financial support of Scott Andrew Barnett. I read it 3 times, not living under the financial support of Scott Andrew Barnett. But I was. On paper, every document in the state of New York said I was completely dependent on him. Tuition, paid by Scott. Car, owned by Scott. Apartment, co-signed by Scott. Grocery money, transferred from Scott's account. Every dollar routed through his name. Every transaction documented. My grandfather had built a wall to protect me. He knew his son. He knew what Scott would do. So Gerald wrote a clause that said, if she's free from him, the money is hers. If she's not, he can claim it. And my father, the man who disappeared for 4 years and returned with a checkbook and a softer voice, had spent every single day since the funeral making sure I looked dependent. Every tuition check, every car payment, every co-signature on every document. Not because he loved me, because each one was a brick in the wall he was building to block me from the one thing my grandfather left to protect me. The attorney's name was printed on the bottom of page 6, Douglas Whelan, Esquire, Syracuse, New York. It was 11 o'clock at night. I called the number anyway. Left a voicemail. My name is Maisie Barnett. I'm Gerald Barnett's granddaughter. I have a copy of his will. I need to speak with you as soon as possible. Douglas Whelan called at 7:15 the next morning. His voice was old, deliberate, and precise. A man who'd spent 50 years choosing his words carefully and wasn't going to stop now. Your grandfather told me you'd call someday, he said. He just hoped it wouldn't be because of what I think it is. I was standing by the window in my apartment, the will spread across my desk. My father has been paying for everything, I said. Tuition, car, apartment, all under his name, all traceable back to him. Silence. 3 full seconds. That's exactly what Gerald was afraid of. He told me my grandfather had added an addendum 2 years before he died. A second layer of protection. Gerald said to me, I remember this word for word, my son will find a way to make her dependent. Don't let him, Doug. Hearing my grandfather's words come through someone else's voice, spoken in a kitchen in Syracuse 60 miles from where I stood, felt like being handed something from beyond the grave. He was still trying to protect me. He'd been trying for years before I even knew I needed it. The addendum specifies that proof of financial dependence must be independently initiated by the beneficiary, Douglas said. Not arranged, facilitated, or engineered by a parent. Your grandfather put it in legal language, but what he meant was simple. If Scott rigs it, it doesn't count. I closed my eyes. My grandfather had built a trap inside his own protection, a failsafe against the very trick his son was playing. Then Douglas said something that made my stomach drop. There's something else. Your father filed a petition in probate court 2 weeks ago. He's claiming you've been financially dependent on him since you were 18. He attached bank records, tuition receipts, the car title, and your lease. The hearing is in 3 weeks. 2 weeks ago. Before graduation, he'd filed before bringing Haley to my ceremony. He filed the day after he confirmed you'd be walking, Douglas said quietly. He needed you at a public family event with the girl present. For the claim. My graduation wasn't my graduation. It was his deadline. Can you come to Syracuse? Douglas asked. Bring everything with his name on it. I'll be there tomorrow. Before I could leave, my phone rang. Aunt Brenda, my father's older sister. She runs a hair salon in Utica. We're not close, but she's always been polite in the way people are when they want you to mistake distance for warmth. Honey, she said, her voice thick with rehearsed concern. I heard about graduation. I just want to make sure you're not doing anything you'll regret. Family is family. Family is family. The sentence people use when they want you to absorb the hit quietly. Did Dad call you? I asked. He mentioned you might be stirring things up. And I just think, your grandfather loved all of us equally. He wouldn't want us fighting. I almost laughed. I'd just read the will. I'd just read the clause Gerald wrote specifically to protect me from his own son. Gerald didn't love equally. He loved precisely, with paperwork and legal clauses and addendums. Aunt Brenda, I said, did Dad tell you about the addendum? Silence. What addendum? The one Grandpa added 2 years before he died. The one that says he knew Dad would try this. Longer silence. Click. She hung up. And in that dial tone I heard something important. She didn't know about the addendum. My father had given her just enough to make her cooperative, probably a promise, a slice of the estate if she kept quiet. But he hadn't told her Gerald had anticipated the whole thing. He controlled each person with a different piece of the story, just enough truth to keep them loyal, never the whole picture. I spent that evening on the floor of my apartment with every financial document from the last 4 years spread across the carpet in chronological order, a timeline in paper. The first payment, $4,200, tuition deposit to SUNY Albany, dated 3 months after Grandpa Gerald's funeral. Before that, 4 years of nothing. Not $1, not one phone call. Not one answer when my mother dialed his number from the ER at 2 in the morning. The timeline was perfect. Gerald dies in June. Scott reads the will by August. First payment in September. He didn't come back because grief changed him. He came back because a dead man's documents told him there was money to take, and the only obstacle was a 20-year-old clause about a girl named Maisie. I tried calling Haley. She picked up, but her voice was guarded, tight. Dad told me not to talk to you about this. About what exactly? She went quiet, then hung up. The word "this" stayed with me. Not about the graduation or about the girl thing. About this. A specific unnamed thing she'd been instructed to avoid, which meant there was a this. A plan with edges. A plan she'd been briefed on. I spent that evening on the floor of my apartment, building a timeline. Every document from the last 4 years spread across the carpet in chronological order. Receipts on the left, bank transfers in the center. Signed documents on the right. It looked like an audit, because that's what it was. The first payment, $4,200, tuition deposit to SUNY Albany, dated 3 months after Grandpa Gerald's funeral. Before that, 4 years of nothing. Not $1, not one phone call, not one text on Christmas morning, not one answer when my mother called from a hospital waiting room. 3 months. That was the gap between the funeral and the first check. 3 months is how long it takes for a will to enter initial probate in New York. 3 months is how long it takes a man to read a document, understand what it means, and start building a plan. Gerald dies in June. Scott reads the will by August. First payment in September. He didn't come back because grief changed him. He came back because a dead man's paperwork told him there was money on the table, and the only obstacle was a clause about financial independence and a girl named Maisie. I sat cross-legged on the carpet, surrounded by 4 years of paper, and I thought about the call he'd made. That first call. The soft voice. The careful words. I've been doing a lot of thinking. He had been doing a lot of thinking. Just not the kind I imagined. Douglas Whelan's office was on the second floor of a narrow brick building off James Street in Syracuse. The staircase creaked. The hallway smelled like radiator heat and old paper. His door had frosted glass with his name in gold letters. Half the gold flaked away. Inside, every surface was covered with files. On the wall behind his desk hung a framed photograph of my grandfather, young, standing in front of his first shop. Gerald's Auto. The sign was hand-painted. I could see the wobble on the G. He'd painted it himself. Douglas was smaller than I expected. White hair, reading glasses on a chain. He moved slowly but with purpose, a man who'd learned that speed doesn't make you right. He opened a filing cabinet and pulled out the original will, thicker than my copy. Extra pages. The addendum. Gerald added this 2 years before he passed, Douglas said. He told me, I know my son Doug. He won't wait for me to get cold. What exactly does the addendum say? It clarifies the independence clause, specifies that proof of financial dependence must be independently initiated by the beneficiary, not arranged or engineered by a parent. He looked at me over his glasses. Your grandfather was trying to fireproof you. And the petition my father filed? That's the problem. He attached strong documentation, bank records, receipts, car title, lease. On paper, it looks like a devoted father supporting his daughter. The judge may not read it the way Gerald intended. He set the will down, folded his hands. We need to prove his support was engineered. Strategic, not parental. Deliberate, not generous. Do you have anything besides the financial records? I thought of Haley, 19 years old, pink shirt, scared eyes, standing in a parking lot in a costume someone else picked out. I have a sister, I said, who was told to lie for him. Douglas looked up from his desk. If she'll testify, we have a case. I stood to leave. At the door, I turned back. Did my grandfather think this would actually work? The clause? The addendum? Douglas was quiet for a moment. He took off his glasses, cleaned them with the edge of his tie, a gesture that looked like it had been repeated 10,000 times over 50 years of practice. Then, he told me once, I can't protect her from everything, but I can make sure the paper protects her from the worst thing. He meant Scott. Gerald always meant Scott. He loved his son, but he didn't trust him. And he was right not to. How did he know? I asked. How did he know Scott would do exactly this? Douglas put his glasses back on. Because Scott did something similar when Gerald's brother died in 2004. Tried to claim assets that weren't his. Gerald stopped him then. But Gerald knew he wouldn't be around to stop him next time, so he made the paper do it. I drove back to Albany with the addendum on the passenger seat. The same seat where the envelope had sat 3 days earlier. But now it felt different. Before, I was carrying a secret someone else had made. Now I was carrying a shield someone had built for me before I knew I'd need it. That evening, driving back from Syracuse on I-90, my phone rang. Dad. He didn't know I'd been to a lawyer. He didn't know I'd read the addendum. He didn't know I'd arranged 4 years of receipts on the carpet like evidence tags. Hey, Maze, he said. Warm, easy. How you holding up? I know graduation was a lot. Just want to make sure we're okay. We're okay. Not, are you okay? We're okay. He wasn't checking on me. He was checking the perimeter. You know, Maze, everything I did these last 4 years. The tuition, the car, all of it. That was me trying to be the dad I should have been. I hope you know that. He listed them. Tuition, car, the exact items in his probate petition. He was reciting his own evidence and calling it love. I know exactly what you did, Dad, I said. Silence. Long. Well, he said finally. Good. I hung up. And for the first time since graduation, I smiled. Not a happy smile. The smile of someone who just confirmed their math. What do you think Haley will do when she finds out she was never in the will? Stay loyal to a father who lied to her. Or help the sister she just met? I met Haley at a coffee shop in Rochester on a Wednesday afternoon. She was already there. Corner booth, oversized hoodie, no glitter. She had a cup of black coffee she wasn't drinking. She looked smaller than I remembered. Younger. I sat across from her. He told you to wear that shirt, didn't he? She didn't look up. Nodded slowly, like the admission weighed something. What else did he tell you to do? She wrapped both hands around the cold cup. He said if I showed up at your graduation, he'd help me with rent. Said I'd get part of Grandpa's money. She paused. He also said if anyone ever asks, I should tell them you lived with us sometimes, that you stayed over at our place. I've never been to your place. I didn't know your address until 3 days ago. I know. She looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed but clear. He rehearsed it with me, like a script, word for word, in the car. Between the highway on-ramp and your school's parking lot. Between the highway and the parking lot. 14 minutes, maybe. That's how long the drive is from I-90 to the SUNY Albany campus. While I was walking across a stage and shaking hands with a dean, my father was coaching a teenager in a passenger seat, making her repeat sentences until they sounded natural. He also told me if it ever came to court, I should say you stayed with us on holidays. That we had you over for Thanksgiving. He said to keep it simple. Just say yes if anyone asks. He said it was a formality. A formality. That's the word people use when they need you to lie but don't want you to feel the weight of it. Haley, I said, did he tell you when the will was signed? He said it included all grandchildren, past and future. Past and future. His language. Not the will's. The will said, at the time of signing. He'd softened the wording for her, given her a version that included her. I opened the folder I'd brought and turned the first page toward her, pointed at the date. 20 years ago. You're 19, I said. You weren't born when this was signed. There's no future clause. You were never in the will. She stared at the date, lips moving, counting backward. The same math I'd done alone in my apartment 3 nights earlier. He lied to me, she whispered. He lied to both of us. Different lies. Same purpose. She pushed the coffee away, stared at the table for a long time. The espresso machine hissed behind the counter. Someone laughed near the door. The world kept going around us like it didn't know what was happening in this booth. Does he actually love either of us? I let the question sit. She was 19. She'd driven an hour to sit across from a stranger because she was hoping someone would finally tell her something true. No, I said. But we don't need him to. Something shifted behind her eyes. Not trust. Not yet. But the exhaustion of putting down a weight she didn't know she'd been carrying. What do you need me to do? She asked. Tell the truth. That's all. I sat in my car outside the coffee shop after Haley left. She stayed inside, ordered another coffee, stared at her phone. 19. Cashier at Target. Studio apartment. Told by her own father to put on a costume and memorize a lie. I looked at the folder on the passenger seat. The will. The addendum. The bank statements. The Instagram screenshot. The lease. The car title. For the first time, I could see the whole architecture. Not fragments, not suspicions. The blueprint. Grandpa Gerald built a wall. My father spent 4 years dismantling it. One tuition check at a time, one car title at a time, one lease co-signature at a time. My mother watched and said nothing because she had her own arrangement to protect. Aunt Brenda said nothing because she'd been promised a share. And Haley had been handed a pink shirt and a story about belonging. Every person in this family got a different lie, calibrated to their weakness, tuned to their need. And me, the accounting major with the 3.8 GPA and the highlighted bank statements, I'd been turned into evidence against myself. Every dollar my father gave me was a line item in a case designed to prove I couldn't survive without him. The worst part wasn't the scheme. It was the 4 years of gratitude, the dinners I thanked him for, the birthday card I mailed, the voicemail I left on Father's Day. Thanks for being there, Dad. It means a lot. I'd written testimonials for my own trap. I called Douglas. She'll testify. Then we file the counterpetition tomorrow. The call from my mother came at 10 that night. I was at my desk, printing the counterpetition Douglas had drafted. The printer was slow, an old inkjet that paused between each page like it needed to think about what it was printing. Maisie, I heard you went to see Doug Whelan. Her voice was thin, tightly controlled. The voice of a woman trying very hard to sound calm while her foundations shift beneath her. Who told you? She bypassed the question the way she bypasses every question that has a name attached to it. If you file against your father, the court will look at everything. Everything, Maisie. She paused. I could hear her breathing on the other end, shallow, measured. Including the divorce settlement. I waited. I let the silence do the work. The printer hummed behind me. I have a portion of your grandfather's assets in my settlement, she said. It was part of the agreement when your father and I separated. It's how I kept the house. If the court reopens the estate and reviews the distribution. Her voice dropped to nearly a whisper. I could lose everything, Maisie. The house, the settlement, everything I built after he left, everything she built. She framed it like independence, like survival. But what she actually built was a wall of silence around a deal that required her daughter to stay in the dark. There it was. The thing she'd been circling since the parking lot. The reason she texted she can't see the date, instead of, "Come home, let me explain." The reason she ran from the stands. My mother had a deal. A quiet, paper-clipped arrangement tucked inside a divorce settlement that gave her a piece of Grandpa Gerald's estate in exchange for silence. She'd known about the will. She'd known what my father was building with the tuition and the car and the lease. And she'd said nothing. Not because she feared him, because speaking would cost her the deal. "You knew about the will," I said. "You knew what he was doing to me. And you said nothing because you had a deal too." She was crying now. Not dramatic sobs. The kind of crying that leaks through clenched teeth when the thing you've been holding together starts falling apart. "I'm not stopping," I said. I hung up. The printer finished. I picked up the pages. Signed my name at the bottom. Maisie Louise Barnett. I sat in the dark for a while after. No lamp. Just the blue standby glow of the printer. I thought about the words she used. Including me. The way she slid herself into the casualty list. As if watching your daughter get robbed and choosing not to scream made you a victim too. I picked up my phone. Scrolled to Mom. Removed her from favorites. Not blocked. Just no longer one tap away. Boundaries start small. They start with the decision to stop making someone easy to reach when they've spent years being easy to hide behind. 2 days before the hearing, Haley called. Her voice was high and fast, the way people talk when they're reporting something before they lose the nerve. "Dad came to my apartment. He just showed up. He knows I talked to you." She took a shaky breath. "He said if I testify against him, he'll tell everyone I knew about the shirt, that I was part of the whole plan from the start." He was threatening her. His own daughter. 19. Alone. "But that's not why I'm calling." Her voice dropped. "He left something on my kitchen table, a photo, of you and me sitting at a Thanksgiving dinner. Turkey, candles, both of us smiling. It looks completely real." She paused. "We've never had Thanksgiving together. That dinner never happened. He made it on a computer, and he told me to submit it as evidence that you lived with us." He wasn't just building a paper trail anymore. He was fabricating one. Manufacturing a history that never existed. And he was asking a 19-year-old to hand-deliver it to a courtroom and swear it was true. But here's what my father didn't understand about desperate moves: their confessions. If his real evidence was strong enough, if the tuition receipts and the car title were enough, he wouldn't need a fake Thanksgiving. The Photoshop proved what the bank statements hinted at. His entire case was construction, and he knew it was crumbling. "Take a photo of that photo," I said. "Front and back. Send it to me. And Haley, bring it to the hearing. Don't tell him you're coming." She was quiet for a second. I could hear traffic on her end. She was probably standing outside her apartment, too scared to have this conversation inside where the walls felt like they might be listening. "Okay," she said. "Haley? Yeah? You're not in on anything. Whatever he says, whatever he threatens. You're a 19-year-old girl who was lied to. That's all you ever were in this." She exhaled, the long, slow kind of breath that comes out when you finally set down something heavy. That night, I went through 4 years of email. Every message from my father. Every CC, every forward. Buried in freshman year, I found it. An email he'd sent to SUNY Albany's bursar office, CC'd to me. I must have glanced at it once and kept scrolling. It read, "Please confirm that all tuition payments are recorded under my name, Scott A. Barnett, as parent/guardian. This is for personal financial documentation purposes." Personal financial documentation purposes. He'd asked the university, in writing, on the record, CC'd to me so there'd be a chain of evidence even I could verify, to record every payment under his name. Not mine. Not on behalf of Maisie Barnett, under Scott A. Barnett. He'd instructed them to build the exact paper trail he needed, and he'd done it 4 years ago, before I'd even unpacked my dorm room. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. 4 years ago, while I was buying a shower caddy and choosing which dining plan to sign up for, my father was emailing the bursar's office to make sure the leash was properly documented. I forwarded it to Douglas. He responded at midnight. "This is intent. Print 3 copies." I printed 3 copies, set them on top of the growing folder. The folder was thick now. 4 years of love letters written in financial ink, each one saying the same thing in a different denomination. You belong to me. The hearing was held in Onondaga County Probate Court on a Thursday morning. I wore the navy blazer I'd bought for internship interviews. Professional, controlled. The outfit of someone who came to present numbers, not emotions. The courtroom was small. No jury. A judge behind an elevated bench. 2 tables facing her. Douglas and I sat on the left. My father and his attorney, gray suit, leather briefcase, a man I'd never seen, sat on the right. Haley sat in the witness area. She'd come alone. Same hoodie as the coffee shop. No makeup. She looked like exactly what she was, a teenager who'd been told too many lies by too many adults. Aunt Brenda sat 3 rows back in the gallery. She didn't look at me. She looked at her hands. My mother wasn't there. She didn't come. She didn't call. My father's attorney presented first. Calm, practiced. Mr. Barnett had provided consistent financial support for 4 years. Tuition, housing, transportation. Ms. Barnett had benefited from this support. The result was financial dependence. Under the will's terms, she didn't qualify for the independent distribution clause. The designated portion should revert to the broader estate. My father sat straight, hands flat on the table. He looked at me once with the expression, the sad eyes, the tilted head, the one that says, "This is for your own good, Maze." Douglas stood. He didn't raise his voice, didn't gesture. Spoke the way my grandfather used to. Steady, factual, like a man reading measurements. "Your Honor, Ms. Barnett never requested financial support. She never authorized any payment. She never signed any document enabling her father to pay tuition, own her vehicle, or co-sign her lease." He placed the bank statements on the table, highlighted, annotated. Every payment was made from Mr. Barnett's personal account, directly to third parties, without Ms. Barnett's written consent. The vehicle is titled solely in his name. The lease was co-signed at his suggestion, despite her credit score of 740. My father's attorney stood. A father paying for his daughter's education is not unusual. It's parental. The result is dependence, regardless of initiation. My father nodded. Then, quietly, to no one. "I was just trying to help." Douglas placed a second document on the table. "Your Honor, a timeline. Mr. Barnett had no contact with his daughter from age 14 to 18. No calls, no support. He reappeared 3 months after Gerald Barnett's death, when the will entered probate." He pointed to the first entry. $4,200, tuition deposit, September, the year Gerald died. Before that, 4 years of nothing. He placed the addendum beside it. Gerald Barnett added this 2 years before his death. It specifies financial dependence must be independently initiated by the beneficiary, not engineered by a parent. Gerald told me, in his own words, "My son will find a way to make her dependent. Don't let him." Then Haley stood. She walked to the witness area, hands shaking. She pressed them flat against her hoodie. "My father told me to wear a shirt that said 'Proud Big Sister' to Maisie's graduation," she said. Her voice was thin but audible. "He told me if I came, he'd give me part of the inheritance. He told me to say Maisie had lived with us. She swallowed. She never has. I met her for the first time that day. Silence in the courtroom. He told me I was in the will. I believed him. But the will was signed 20 years ago. I'm 19. She looked at my father. He lied to me too. My father turned in his chair. His face darkened. Not embarrassment, not sadness, but rage. The slow, pressurized kind that builds behind a mask until the mask can't hold it anymore. Haley reached into her bag, pulled out the photo. Thanksgiving dinner. Turkey, candles. 2 girls smiling side by side at a table set for a holiday that never happened. A memory manufactured on a laptop and printed on photo paper. He left this at my apartment last week, she said. She handed it to the bailiff. He told me to submit it as evidence that Maisie lived with us. That dinner never took place. I've never shared a meal with Maisie in my life. This photograph was created on a computer. The judge took the photo, held it at arm's length, studied it, then looked at my father. Douglas stood again. His voice hadn't changed. Same steady, measured tone, but the words landed heavier now. Your Honor, Mr. Barnett didn't just engineer financial dependence. He fabricated photographic evidence. He created a falsified image of a family gathering that never occurred. And he gave it to his own 19-year-old daughter with instructions to present it to this court as authentic. The courtroom was quiet. The kind of quiet that has weight. My father stood up. His attorney grabbed his sleeve. My father shook him off. She's my daughter. His voice filled the room. That money was supposed to be mine. My father had no right to... He stopped. He heard himself. My father had no right. Not, I love my daughter. Not, I was trying to help. My father had no right. The mask was gone. This was a man who believed his dead father owed him something, and he was willing to use his own children as tools to collect. I stood. Douglas nodded. Your Honor, I said. Level. Controlled. The voice I use when a balance sheet doesn't add up, and I know why. My father didn't come back into my life because he missed me. He came back because my grandfather died and left me something he wanted. Every tuition check was a chain. Every car payment was a leash. He didn't support me. He invested in making me look dependent, because that was the only way to take what my grandfather built to protect me. The judge read the addendum again. Read the bank statements. Looked at the fabricated photograph. Looked at my father, sitting now, staring at the table. The court finds sufficient evidence that Mr. Barnett's financial support was not initiated by the beneficiary and was strategically engineered to circumvent the independence clause, she said. The addendum's anti-manipulation provision is upheld. The petition is denied. Ms. Barnett will receive the designated portion under the terms specified by Gerald Raymond Barnett. My father didn't look up. His attorney closed his briefcase. The click echoed off the walls. Haley cried, quietly, into her sleeve. I didn't. Outside the courthouse, my father walked fast to his car without a word. He didn't look at Haley, didn't look at Brenda, didn't look at the sky or the steps or anything except the 15 feet of sidewalk between him and his truck. His attorney followed 3 paces behind, carrying the briefcase that now held a losing case. Neither of them looked back. The truck pulled out of the lot before anyone else had reached the sidewalk. Tires on gravel. Engine gunning. The sound of a man who'd spent 4 years building something and watched it collapse in 45 minutes. Aunt Brenda stood near the exit, purse clutched with both hands. She saw me but didn't move. I could read the math on her face, the calculation running behind her eyes, trying to figure out what this ruling meant for whatever my father had promised her. She'd had years to pick up the phone and warn me. She'd had Thanksgivings and Christmases and random Tuesday afternoons when she could have said, "Honey, your father is up to something." She chose quiet. And now quiet was all she had. Haley found me on the courthouse steps. The wind had picked up. Her hoodie was too thin for it. I'm sorry about the shirt, she said. About everything. You didn't know. I should have asked questions. You're 19. You're allowed to trust your father. That's supposed to be safe. I showed her the photo on my phone. Grandpa Gerald, young, squinting into the sun, standing in front of Gerald's auto with a wrench and a hand-painted sign. He looked like a man who built things to last. He would have liked you, I said. I looked at the Honda Civic in the parking lot, his name on the title. I took the key off my ring, walked to the car, set it on the roof. The metal clicked against the paint. I took the bus home. I wasn't keeping anything with his name on it. Douglas offered to drive me to the station. We didn't talk much on the way. At the curb, he shook my hand. His grip was firm and steady. The grip of a man who'd spent decades keeping promises for people who couldn't keep them themselves. Your grandfather would be proud of you, he said. I know, I said. And I did. Not because I'd won, because I'd read the numbers correctly, because I'd done what Gerald raised me to do. Look at the ledger, find the discrepancy, and refuse to sign off on a lie. 2 weeks later, I started at Garrison and Wells, a small accounting firm in Albany. 3rd floor of a converted Victorian on Madison Avenue. My desk faced a window that overlooked a parking lot and a strip of sky. On the corner of the desk, one photo. Grandpa Gerald squinting into the sun. My new apartment was on a side street off Central Avenue. Small, clean. The lease had one name on it. Mine. The deposit came from my first 2 paychecks. Not from anyone else's account. Not from anyone else's plan. I signed the application myself. The landlord approved it in 12 minutes. My credit score hadn't changed. It was still 740. It had always been enough. My new car, a 12-year-old Corolla, 120,000 miles, scratch on the bumper, vanilla air freshener from the previous owner, had one name on the title. Mine. I bought it from a retired teacher in Delmar for $3,800 cash. She threw in a set of floor mats and told me it had never given her trouble. I believed her. Some people mean what they say. I didn't call my father. He didn't call me. Some silences are mutual decisions. Others are verdicts. Aunt Brenda texted a week after the hearing. I hope you know I always cared about you, honey. I read it twice. Didn't respond. Some sentences are their own answer. The care she claimed had never materialized into a single warning, a single phone call, a single moment of courage. I didn't delete the text. I just left it on read. Sometimes that says more than words. My mother left one voicemail. I listened to it sitting on my new couch in my new apartment. I know you're angry. I should have told you sooner. I was scared, Maisie. I was always scared. She was scared. I believe that. I also believe she weighed her fear against her deal. Fear on one side, money on the other. And the money won every single time, for 4 years. I don't hate her. I just can't sit across from someone at Thanksgiving and pretend that watching your daughter get robbed and choosing not to scream is the same thing as being robbed yourself. If someone had to pay a price so you could finally see the truth about your family, was it worth it? And would you have opened that envelope? A month after the hearing, Haley texted me. 3 words and an emoji. I got in. Community college. Rochester. Fall semester. Early childhood education. She wanted to work with kids. A girl who'd been used as a prop wanting to spend her life making sure children feel seen. I transferred tuition for her first semester from the account where Grandpa Gerald's estate had been deposited. The account with one name on it. Mine. I sent the money under her name. Not mine. Because that's how you give someone money when you actually mean it. I attached a note. Grandpa Gerald didn't know about you, but I know he would have wanted this. She sent back, "Thank you, big sister. No glitter. No costume. Just a girl calling another girl by a name that finally meant something true." I closed my laptop, looked out the window. My Corolla sat under a maple tree, sun on the windshield, summer light stretching across the parking lot in Albany. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call my father. I didn't need permission to be whole. My grandfather built a wall around me before I knew I needed one. My father spent 4 years tearing it down with checks and car payments and a lease he called love. My mother watched and said nothing because she had her own deal to protect. But here's what none of them counted on. I'm an accountant. I know how to read a ledger. And when I finally read mine, every line told the same story. Every gift was a transaction, and every transaction was a trap. Some people show love with money. My father showed ownership. And the most expensive thing I ever did was become free.